Welcome back, Inebri-arts. This is Andy, the Inebri-art podcast. Once again, recording from my home because we still can't really go anywhere. But because of that, we're able to get a lot of interviews with people that we wouldn't normally be able to get. And today's guest is calling in from across the pond, as people like to say. It's Ollie Usiskin. Did I get that right? Did I get the last name right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And you're
great.
a session drummer. So for our listeners who might not know, what is a session drummer?
Yeah. Okay. Well, basically, session drummer primarily is a let's maybe change it to session musician.
Oh, I'm
maybe.
sorry.
So,
okay.
Yeah. I mean, just for an example, any musician who's a session musician primarily is someone that back in the day maybe mostly made their wages from doing recording sessions in studios, for records and that sort of thing. But I mean, it can be a wider term for musicians, in general that do live sessions as well. So session musician can basically mean a musician that basically is for hire for recording sessions, live playing sessions, so playing live shows and and so on. So I mean, yeah, it kind of covers a whole range of stuff.
So for example, if we think of artists who are quote unquote solo artists, like say Prince or something like that, but the drummer that he would hire to go on tour with him and record with him would be a session musician.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. And basically, so that would mean that he would hire, like a freelance person, a freelance musician, or freelance musicians for his band. Mm-hmm. And that means that everyone's kind of employed on an individual basis, and they are all sort of separate in what they do.
So what's the benefit? Like, do you prefer that way? Or I mean, obviously you prefer that way, that's how you work, but what's the benefit opposed to that of being in just like a regular band lineup?
Yeah, well, I mean, the difference would be like, there are some drummers, like John Bonham with Led Zeppelin, or Neil Peart with Rush, or Mitch Mitchell with Jimi Hendrix, and there are drummers that have made their name from mainly working, with one band. And they've, become established from just being in that band, and they're known mainly for being in that band. But I guess people that are session musicians, tend to kind of, have through their lifetime, they have played in various different, bands, as opposed to one specific band that they've, stayed with, So, but then again, some session musicians have, like, Simon Phillips, the drummer, who, now has his own band. But Simon, was in bands like, he was in Toto, the band Toto, for many, many years. And then, you could take another example, Vinnie Colaiuta, the session drummer who, originally back in his 20s, I believe, worked with Frank Zappa. Or it may have been in his late teens, I'm not sure. But he was with Frank Zappa for several years, and then he later on went on to being Sting's drummer in Sting's band for, I think, over 20 years. So, I mean, so I mean, I guess that's probably, the difference, the main difference,
And so how did you, I mean, were you always into drumming? Is that like what you started off on, and how early did you get started?
Yeah, I mean, when I was a kid, my mother accused me of bashing the hell out of her pots and pans, you know, and getting everything I could get my hands on to kind of drum with, probably, using, my cutlery at the table. But yeah, I mean, then it kind of went on to, I remember very sort of early recollections of my childhood. My dad had a friend, Scott, who had a record company at the time, was involved in the music business. And Scott, lived, in North London where we were living. And my dad took me over to Scott's house once, and Scott had a whole drum kit set up, in one of his rooms in his house, and let me sit down and kind of have a bit of a play on it. And it was really exciting. And then later on, I was kind of at Sunday school, they call it. And I was, at this Sunday school kind of club. And then I think in the other part of the building, there was a band rehearsing for a musical. They were going to do a musical performance in this building. So I went along to sort of check out the band. And I was very young at the time. And I went along and, I saw the drummer playing, and just something clicked in me. And I just thought, wow, I'd really love to be able to do that. And then, luckily for me, when I literally started secondary school, so I was 12 years old. Mm-hmm. I saw a notice in the school saying drum lessons, and I signed up for the drum lessons, and I ended up. This is quite a funny story, actually. I signed up for the drum lessons, and the drum teacher was teaching at the back of the school hall. So if you can imagine, there's like this massive hall where, you have, you go at lunchtime, you have your school dinners. And then right at the back of the hall, there were these little rooms, because the hall had a stage at the end of it. Mm-hmm. Where the head mistress would stand and give her speech, at assemblies. And then behind that area in the back, there were lots of little rooms, and that's where I think a lot of the music lessons, or some of the music lessons, went on. So that's where I'd found out my first drum lesson was going to be. So I went into this room, and there was this kind of older man. When I say older, I'm not sure how old he would have been then. Probably maybe in his 60s or 70s. But anyway, and he was sitting in this room with one drum, with a snare drum, a single snare drum. And I just thought, well, I've come for a drum lesson. Where's the rest of the drums?
Cymbals, it's bass drum, yeah.
Yeah. I thought, well, this is like, this is the opportunity to have a drum lesson. And there's this guy, he's got like one drum. Anyway, he sat me down, in front of the drum, and then he basically asked me, his name was Cyril, actually, the drum teacher. And Cyril asked me, he said, okay, let me see what you can do. And I just thought, what do you mean? You want to see what I can do? But there's only one drum there, And you see, that's where the education went from there, because he started me off on basic, what they call the rudiments of mm-hmm. drumming, which is the hand exercises of drumming. And he started me on hand exercise rudiments. And then we went on to, learning basic, beats and rhythms on the kit. But it was a really good way, actually. And kind of later on, I understood why he just started with the one drum, because, a lot of drumming stems. I mean, if you take a drummer, for instance, like Steve Gadd, mm-hmm. The very famous session drummer, who's worked with everyone. I mean, Steve worked for many years with Eric Clapton. He plays with Eric Clapton. He's in Eric's band. He's played in the past with Paul Simon, James Taylor, Chick Corea, many, many different great bands. But Steve started, if you watch any interviews with him, he'll tell you that he started drumming from drum corps, from marching band.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That's where he gets some of his kind of trademark, rhythmic things on the snare drum that he does, because it all stems back from, and you can hear that in other drummers like Buddy Rich, Gene Krupa, some of the other drummers, Tony Williams even, Tony Williams, if you ever see him do, Tony Williams was the drummer that played for Miles Davis.
Okay.
Miles Davis's group, when he was a child protege, and he played with Miles Davis when I think he was about 16 or 17 years old.
Oh wow!
When he joined Miles's band, in the band was Herbie Hancock, Ron Carter, and Wayne Shorter. Probably one of the most iconic bebop jazz bands in my lifetime that I've ever heard. Sadly, I never got to see the band live, but I've seen footage of the band, and I've got a lot of their recordings. But Tony, when you see Tony, when Tony used to do drum clinics, and when you used to see him perform on his own, he did a lot of work on the snare drum,
Mm-hmm.
and you could tell that he'd really worked on his rudiments, on his hand, exercise rudiments, because of the way that he was playing, and so, the way that he played, with his hands on the snare drum. So, with such focus and, definition, so.
Yeah. So at what point did you kind of look at this interest in drums to becoming like a career? Like, when we right away being like, oh, I want to be a professional drummer, or did it kind of come later in life?
Yeah, I was actually quite a late starter, to be honest. I didn't start playing professional gigs probably until I was in my 20s, I'd say. But I was quite involved in education before that, so I actually spent quite a bit of time studying in America. And,
hey, you're saying you went to school here in Boston?
Yeah, well, what happened is there was a drummer that basically what happened is there was a drum teacher in Boston who had a drum school, and his name's John. John, had this drum school, and I found out about it, and so I got the chance to go and study with John, so I ended up going to Boston, and then he thought that I was at a good level, and so he recommended that I went to Berklee College of Music.
Mm-hmm.
And so I applied, they accepted me, and then I did a summer semester at Berklee, and actually when I was studying, actually I should mention, so John still got this music school, and it's called the Horrigan Drum School.
Yeah.
Horrigan Music School, which is in Boston. So if there's any musicians that are interested, especially in doing drums, I'd really recommend John. He's a great teacher. So it's John Horrigan, and his school is the Horrigan Music School, which is in Boston. But actually, whilst I was leading up to going to Berklee College of Music, I studied actually with another drum teacher called Alan Dawson, the late Alan Dawson, and Alan, taught many people. Like some of his students were Tony Williams, the drummer I mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Tony studied with Alan before he joined Miles Davis's band, when he was a child. Terry Lynn Carrington, the drummer that's played with Herbie Hancock's band, and many other artists. Steve Smith, the drummer who was known for playing with Journey, the band Journey.
Oh yeah.
And Steve's
right.
a big.
I'm trying to remember. He went to my high school.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. The music director for our high school band was actually a high school. I think Steve Smith was like a senior when he was like a freshman or junior. So we used to give him a hard time about how like Steve Smith was touring the world and he was back there teaching us. So yeah, so Steve Smith,
Oh, okay.
local guy from Massachusetts, and went to the same high school.
Wow. Oh, right. Oh, that's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. So, I mean, Steve Smith studied with Alan. Vinny Colaiuta, the drummer I mentioned before, studied with Alan as well. And Alan was a fantastic jazz drummer and great musician because he also played a vibraphone as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually got to see Alan play live one time. I went to a local kind of small jazz club, and I saw him play. He is a really fantastic musician and really lovely guy as well. So I studied with him for a while, and like I said, I did the summer program at Berklee College, and then I returned to London, and then it was when that's when I started to kind of get into doing professional gigs, So
you've mentioned a lot of jazz names. I'm assuming you're into jazz music, but being a session drummer, do you enjoy kind of the variety of music that you get to play? Because I'm assuming you get hired for different types of music, or do sometimes you be like, ugh, I got to play, I don't know, country or whatever may not be your jam.
Well, well, it's funny, because I really love country music. I mean, the times I've played country music, and the person I've worked for has asked me, if it's like a function or whatever it is, they've asked me to, learn a bunch of tracks. I've really enjoyed listening to them, and there are actually some of the best musicians in the world. Are the people that play in the country bands, because they're just such polished players. I mean,
I wasn't trying to throw shade at country music. I was just trying to think of something like
no.
Is there a style of music that you don't enjoy playing that you have to, or do you like that ability where being a session musician where you get to play all different styles of music?
Yeah, no. I mean, I guess like, I mean, I've chosen like some of the people that have influenced me. I've chosen not to be like sort of labeled as a certain type of player. Like there are a lot of like drummers that are rock drummers, and they've got that image, like they've got the long hair and the kind of rock image, and they play in rock or metal bands, and that's what they're really their passion is, to do that, and that's great, you know what I mean. Then there are equally on the opposite side, there are jazz players or jazz drummers that just kind of choose to mainly work in the jazz circuit, and so that's their passion, and they you don't see them on a heavy metal gig, you know what I mean. But I mean, because I enjoy so many different types of music. I mean, I grew up listening to all different types of music. From I used to like bands like Dire Straits.
Sure.
I used to love Dire Straits when I grew up. I listened to earlier than that. I was when I was a child, my parents used to play the Beatles a lot. The Rolling Stones, James Taylor, Steely Dan, Cat Stevens, Jerry Rafferty, all those kind of bands. But then later on, I got into other bands like Level 42, who are really great, kind of more funky band. Then I got into lots of rock stuff like Van Halen, Marillion. I used to really like Marillion. Then I was a really big Iron Maiden fan, so I used to love Iron Maiden. And then I kind of later on I got into the more the fusion type, the crossover type of music, like Return to Forever, Chick Corea, and John Schofield, and Tower of Power, and like the other types of mixed kind of Weather Report,
Mm-hmm.
and so so my taste in music is quite varied, and that's why I've not wanted to kind of sort of lock myself into one particular style, but I've wanted to at least be able to play most of the styles to a good standard, and so yeah.
When being a session musician, how much, I don't know if control is the right word, but how much you get to collaborate on the music? Is it just kind of like, here's the music, play what's on the sheet, or do you kind of get to improvise and make suggestions and kind of help whoever you're working with kind of?
Yeah. Well, I mean, no, that's a good question. I mean, it does kind of, I mean, some people, like if you play in certain bands and you're playing, say, you're playing like set tracks,
Mm-hmm.
say covers of set tracks. People want you to more or less play, depending on the band leader, they might want you to stick to the original drum part,
Right.
And not, have a lot of freedom in it, and just keep it quite, quite simple and how it is, But then, I guess it really depends on who you're working with and what kind of projects you're involved with. I mean, for instance, I think I mentioned to you I'm working at the moment. It's a really great honor to be working with Jack Bruce's son. That's the Jack Bruce, obviously the bass player from the band Cream, and I've known Malcolm. His name's Malcolm Bruce, and Malcolm and I have known each other for a number of years, and we're currently working on tracks for a new album, and also we're preparing some material for a online gig, an online show.
Yeah.
So but I mean, whenever I like, when we've gone into the studio, Malcolm's wanted me to obviously follow the phrasing, of the tunes,
Mm-hmm.
but he's very much allowed me to kind of put my own interpretation into it,
Right.
and have the freedom to express myself, which is great, and it just means that, like if you're playing a tune that you heard someone else play on, and it gives you your own chance to kind of interpret it in a different way,
Mm-hmm.
or if someone's programmed the drums, say, and then they've given you something that's got programmed drums on it, then it gives you the chance to kind of be creative with it and come up with your own interpretation of, what you might play, so yeah, I mean, I guess in answer to your question, it really depends, I guess, on, the type of band you're working with, and, the band leader, the person that's in charge, what they really want out of you, in your role, I suppose.
And so you've mentioned it depends on the band leader. You've gotten to play with some pretty big name people, including the one that you initially reached out to me. You played, and not everyone realizes this, that he even made any music, but with Christopher Lee.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And if you're living under a rock and you don't know who Christopher Lee is, I mean, he played Saruman and Lord of the Rings and Count Dooku in Star Wars and Dracula in the Hammer horror movies. I mean, he was knighted. So, what was that like? I mean, was that intimidating? Did you get to were you just playing kind of like the track and like he would record later? Did you get to play with him at all? What was the experience like?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. Well, I mean, first of all, obviously, Christopher Lee, legendary, iconic actor. I mean, I don't know if people realize, but Sir Christopher Lee in his lifetime, he starred in, we're talking about over 200 films,
Mm-hmm.
And
he didn't get started acting until later in life.
Yeah, no, that's right, actually. Yeah. That's right. He actually, he did start, quite late, I believe. I wouldn't like to quote, but I think he may have started, could have been in his 30s, possibly. I could have got that wrong, but yeah, I mean, it goes back to the 40s. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Hammer film, when he worked for Hammer, the Hammer films, when he was playing Dracula and various other roles for Hammer, that dates back to the early 40s,
right?
1940s. But I mean, I'm a big horror fan, so I love horror films, and me and my friends, when I was younger, we used to get together, and watch a horror film, and we used to love the Dracula films,
yeah,
because they were kind of like sort of classic cult films, and still are. I mean, the Dracula films are still shown regularly on the TV. I don't know about over there, but they're shown regularly.
No, not usually. I mean, we can find them, but it's not.
Yeah.
I feel like Christopher Lee. See, this kind of goes back a bit. When I was a kid, and TV wasn't quite so universal, and like there were more regions to it. It seems like each region had like a low budget horror movie type show. Like I know New York and New Jersey had Chiller Theater. Boston had Creature Double Feature. Elvira was kind of like one of those things. So if you had like shows like that, you could find the Hammer horror movies. But nowadays it's just like you can go online and find anything. So.
Yeah, I mean, over here, I mean, we actually have a horror channel on the Freeview. They call it Freeview. I think it's channel 70 is the horror channel, and they are regularly showing Hammer. They show quite a few Hammer films. Like they have the Ghoul.
I wonder if they're on that streaming. Have you heard of the horror streaming service? Sure, now I'm not going to be able to remember the name of it. But it's kind of like a Netflix, but it's just horror movies.
Oh, okay. Right. No, I haven't heard of that.
I can't remember the name of it, but I'm sure I'll think of it later. But I wonder if those. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, but I mean, the horror channel, like the other night, they had the Gorgon, on, which is like a classic Hammer film, and of course Christopher Lee's in that, and I didn't even remember he was in that until I was watching it, and then suddenly, wow, Christopher Lee's in this,
Yeah, I feel like he's one of those actors that is in everything, and then when we didn't have Hammer as much, so I kind of found out about Christopher Lee later in life, and then you go back and watch movies that you've seen, and you go, "Oh, he's in this. I've seen this. I didn't realize."
Yeah, well, that's true, because I mean, I know I'm going away from the subject of your question, but I mean, just to kind of talk a bit more about Sir Christopher Lee. I mean, he, I guess he kind of later on in his life was, very. Became very established when he ended up in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the Star Wars trilogy when he was Count Dooku, obviously. And then, he was in, the Hobbit films,
Tim
later
Burton
on.
used him a lot in movies. He played Willy Wonka.
Yeah, Tim Burton, that's right. Yeah. Tim Burton used him a lot in films, like he was in the Headless Horseman film, Sleepy Hollow.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. But he kind of did get a lot of recognition later on in his life when he was a lot older, but like I said to you at the beginning, people may not realize that he's just been in a ton of films before that, as an actor, and worked, really hard, through the years. But I mean, coming back to your original question, so I mean, I was involved, working on a video, an actual music video. I was lucky to have been involved in a music video with Sir Christopher Lee, and it was based on a tune, I believe, called "The Bloody Verdict of Verdun," and it was on one of Sir Christopher's albums called Charlemagne by the Sword and the Cross, and that was the album that I'm actually credited on as drummer, and that was the first Charlemagne album. There were two Charlemagne albums that I was involved with. So the first one was the one I just mentioned, Charlemagne by the Sword and the Cross, and that was like a symphonic metal album.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously heavy metal, but with an orchestra. And so basically we did this music video, or I was asked to be part of this music video for one of those tracks from that album. So we went into a green screen, film shoot for the day. And, I had, prior to that, been asked by the management to help find a band, to kind of be the metal band starring in the video. So I asked a friend of mine, a bass player, Tony Newton, who has a band called Voodoo 6, and I asked him if he'd like him and the band, some of the members of the band would like to be in the video, and they agreed. And what ended up happening is, we were in the video, and I was, playing drums with a lot of members of Voodoo 6, but the drummer, whose name's Grav, ended up actually starring as one of the acting roles.
That's kind of cool.
In the video, and he actually ended up playing a younger version of the character that Christopher Lee was based on, I think. Mm-hmm. In the video. I could have got that wrong, but so he stars in the video with he's got a sword. Grav, that's the drummer from Voodoo 6. He's got a sword, but I mean, the best thing to do is to check out the video yourselves, because rather than have me describe it, it's on YouTube, and I think it's basically got over 2 million views on it now.
Yeah.
So it's done really well, and it's called The Bloody Verdict of Verdun, and so if you put that in, then you'll see the video come up. But so that was the first major piece of work that I ended up doing.
Was Christopher Lee there as part of
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say. Sorry. He didn't. No, he actually no. He wasn't filmed on that day, but he very kindly came down to say hello to the crew and everyone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we got to sort of hang out and meet Sir Christopher Lee and have some pictures taken. And there's a really nice photo that I've actually got. That's the whole of the team, of the people that were in the video, with Christopher Lee holding like a heavy metal guitar.
Oh, nice.
And he's got a beard. He had a beard at the time. So that was a really cool picture. I've actually got it. I've got a print of the photo, and it's sitting right next to my bed on my bedside table. Yeah. But,
yeah.
But anyway, but then basically, the management, were happy working with me, and the next thing was because the fans, after the symphonic metal album had been brought out, all the fans were kind of demanding or kind of asking, hey, when's there going to be an actual full heavy metal album,
right.
from Christopher Lee. So that's when, there was the idea of doing a second album, and what it was going to be was a heavy metal version of the first album,
Mm-hmm.
So taking the tracks from the first album and turning them into heavy metal. So someone had to, be involved arranging those tunes to heavy metal. And the person that I got involved or put forward for the job was a bandmate at the time, who a guitarist that I grew up, playing many gigs with, and that's the guitarist from Judas, the band Judas Priest.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah, and so his name is Richie Faulkner.
Mm-hmm.
So sorry, someone just called me on my.
That's all right.
So,
Believe me,
but anyway,
out of all the ways I've heard Zoom meetings going sideways, I don't think that's a terrible way.
So, but basically, so we had to get someone to arrange the album into heavy metal music. So like I said, I got this friend of mine, who I grew up playing with, guitarist from Judas Priest, called Richie Faulkner, and I got him I asked him if he'd be interested, and then we had a meeting with Christopher Lee's manager, and he agreed to do the work, and then he started to arrange the tracks to heavy metal for the new album. And at the time, Richie wasn't in Judas Priest. He'd been working with Steve Harris, the bass player from Iron Maiden.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so he'd been working with Steve Harris's daughter's band, Lauren Harris, and they'd been touring for about 3 years, opening up for Iron Maiden,
Mm-hmm.
as a support act. So Richie'd been busy doing that, but then, I guess he must have been on a break, and he had some time. So he was arranging the tracks, but the manager of Christopher Lee arranged for Richie and I to go with him to Christopher Lee's house in London and spend an afternoon with him,
Yeah.
So it was really cool. So, he took us up to, where Sir Christopher lived, and, he came down the stairs, and, we went into, a sort of park area, and we sat down, and, we just had a really nice chat, for an hour or so, and it was really nice.
Now,
and
when
then,
you're sitting there with someone who's been knighted, do you still have to call him Sir Christopher Lee, or do you shorten it to Chris, or Sea-Dog?
Yeah, no,
or...
I must admit that I was kind of, every time I've met Sir Christopher in the past, I was a little bit starstruck,
Yeah. I mean,
so I had the so I had the tendency to kind of go a bit quiet and let the other people do the talking,
Yeah.
So yeah. But anyway, yeah. So yeah. Following on, so Richie, was doing the arranging of this heavy metal album, and then what happened is he got the call to audition for Judas Priest. So he had to stop, or he couldn't finish arranging the album, because he ended up getting into the band. They accepted him and took him in the band. He did some extensive rehearsals because they had a tour, a big tour coming up, and then he went straight off on tour with the band. So fantastic opportunity for him. We were like really, really happy, obviously,
Yeah, I mean, that would be like a bonkers call, being like, I'm sorry, I can't continue to work with Christopher Lee. I have to go on tour with Judas Priest.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it was brilliant. We were really, really happy. And, it kind of added something as well to the whole project. And so, yeah. And then in the end, the rest of the tracks were arranged by the guitarist, the person who ended up playing guitar on the album. And the album's called Charlemagne, The Omens of Death. So the first album, Charlemagne by the Sword and the Cross, and the heavy metal album I'm just talking about was Charlemagne, The Omens of Death. And both of those are available on iTunes and Amazon, so you can still buy the albums and download them. But basically, the guitarist who ended up playing on the album and arranging the rest of the tracks is called Hedras Ramos, and he's from Guatemala. And his father, Hedras Ramos, as well. They have the same name, but the son's Hedras Ramos Jr., I think it is.
Right.
And then the father's Hedras Ramos, and he's the on the album. So it's a father and son team. And then I did the drumming for the record, and then there were various singers involved, but obviously the main singing and narration was done by Sir Christopher Lee. And so we did the album, and it was featured everywhere. It was featured in Rolling Stone magazine. All the online papers covered it. And also it was there was a lot of press for it at the time. And also, it obviously was a record breaker, because it meant that Sir Christopher Lee, at the age being in his early 90s, was, then went on, he was the oldest male singer to release a heavy metal album,
Oh, sure, yeah. I mean, I remember when it came out, it was huge, like huge news.
Well, yeah. Well, yeah. So I mean, and then basically, the other work I ended up doing was, after the heavy metal album, I was asked to play on a couple of a heavy metal Christmas track, with a bonus track, so 2 tracks, and they did really well, actually. Again, they're available on iTunes and Amazon. The main track was Silent Night, I think it was, The Little Drummer Boy, that's right. And the bonus track was Silent Night. I could have got that the wrong way around. It may have been the other way around. But the 2 tracks were The Little Drummer Boy, the classic kind of Christmas tune, and then the other one was Silent Night. And we did them in a heavy metal, in a heavy metal style. Again, arranged by Hedras, the guitarist, and all of the Omens of Death drum tracks and Christmas tracks I recorded in studios in London. In fact, the later part of the Omens of Death, the last few tracks and the Christmas tracks, were recorded at a great studio that I'd recommend people to use in North London, Muswell Hill, called Bonafide Studios. And the guys there are super, super nice. Brian, I've known for many years, who runs the place, great guy. And so they're really, really cool people to work with. And then the majority of the tracks, when I first recorded them, the Omens of Death drum tracks, the majority of them were done in another studio, which used to be in Totteridge area, Totteridge and Whetstone in North London again.
Now, do you think session musicians have a more personal relationship with the people in the recording studios, because they're more likely to, say, like, if I was going to record an album and I happened to be in London, I went to this studio and I needed a drummer, I would assume that I would look to the studio people to be like, well, who's in the area? I mean, is that kind of some ways that would work?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've, it's happened to me before, where, I guess it's just down to, it's down to the studio, and I guess who they feel, because if, at the end of the day, it's like if you've got a band, it's like if you're going to recommend someone else to work in a band, then you've got to be able to trust them.
Right.
You've got to know that they can do the job, that they're good at what they do, and obviously see that they're reliable. So I mean, I suppose anyone that any of the studios are recommending as session musicians would have to fill those, presumably would have to fill those categories. And I mean, yeah, it's happened to me before. When I've gone and worked in a studio and they've been we've gotten on really well, and I've maybe just sort of given them a nudge when I've left and said, hey guys, if you're ever stuck, I'm always available. And then people, if you're friendly to people and you leave them with a good impression and they like you, then there's more chance that they're going to call you up to do something if they hear about someone else who needs a musician, musician for
right.
for a session. But I mean, if it's like if you go in there and you're an arsehole,
right? Yeah. Like,
and they can't wait to see you leave, then you're not going to get any work again. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
So it's hard to top Christopher Lee, but have you worked with any other people that we would recognize?
Yeah. Well, actually, I've done quite a bit of live playing and recording in the past with the guitarist from the band Soft Machine. Have you heard of them?
No, I'm not familiar with them.
Well, Soft Machine, they're like a kind of jazz rock band, and they go back many years. And the guitarist in the band now is called John Etheridge. Have you heard of him?
No.
But the original guitarist in Soft Machine, before John took over, as guitarist in the band, was the guitarist Alan Holdsworth.
Okay. Pulling a bunch of names. Maybe it's a British American thing and these aren't registered.
No, that's cool. But anyway, they're like an iconic band, Soft Machine. And, I actually went to see them last year. They played at a progressive music festival at the Shepherd's Bush Empire here in London, which is a really big music venue. And they played, and every time I see that band, the drummer in the band is called John Marshall, and every time I see that band, they blow me away, because they don't like. My impression of the band is every time I see them play, they seem to sort of sound different. They don't always sound the same because there's a lot of improvising that goes on in the band. So they're an instrumental group, so they can improvise a lot in what they do. So that's why whenever you go to see their show, you kind of there's always something unexpected, that happens. Which for me as a musician is great, and you can learn a lot from a band like that. But so I've worked a lot live and done some recording with John Etheridge. And John is very established over here in England. And Soft Machine, the band that he's in, they've toured extensively around the US, and they've toured in Europe as well. I mean, they've been everywhere, through the years. And then I've also, actually through working with John, I've gotten to take part in a yearly festival that's sort of not that far from my area, and it's just a small music festival. But I've gotten to perform with Bill Oddie. I don't know if you've heard of him. Bill Oddie's a TV celebrity, and he's been involved in a lot of nature programs. So he was on a television program for many years called Nature Watch. But then back in the 70s, I could have got that wrong. It could have been the 60s, but he was in kind of like a cult comedy series called The Goodies. Have you ever heard of them? The Goodies?
I don't think so. I do watch a lot of British TV, but I don't think I've ever heard of that.
Right. Well, but I mean, Bill was, Bill's been involved in music, and he had a hit actually in the music charts, back in the day called the Funky Gibbon.
Okay.
And so Bill's been involved in music as well. and he sings, Bill sings. And so, yeah, it's been great. It's been great doing the gigs with Bill and John. And then, in the past, one of the first albums that I played on as a session musician was a jazz album that I ended up on one track, and it was a lady called B.B. Cooper who wrote the music, and it was called Best of British Vocal Jazz, and it starred a lot of very established jazz vocalists like Jackie Dankworth and Barb Younger and Simeon Cosburn, who ended up being the singer on the track that I was on. But the main drummer on that album's a drummer called Mark Fletcher, and Mark Fletcher was the drummer for Ronnie Scott's Jazz Club. So I don't know if you heard of Ronnie Scott's. It's a very famous jazz club here in London.
No, I don't think I have. I gotta get to London more. I've been there, but not for very long.
Yeah. You should. Well, yeah. No, I mean, absolutely. But I mean, Mark happened to not be available on the first day of the week booking of the session. Was a whole week in a studio, and the first day Mark happened not to be available. So the producer, who's a singer, again a very established singer called Ian Shaw, he asked me if I wanted to come in, and do be the drummer on the first day booking at the studio, for this album. So I came down for the whole day, and they ended up I ended up on one of the tracks on the album. So that was kind of like the first main record that I played on. Currently at the moment I'm involved with a very big jazz project that I can't tell you too much about, but it's a tribute record.
Okay.
So it's obviously a tribute to a very established musician who sadly passed away a few years ago. But there's some really great names in the jazz world. Some of them, American artists that are featured on this record. They're going to be featured on this record, and I'm the main drummer on it. And we've done some really amazing tracks. So I think it's going to be a really great record, and I can't wait.
You seem to really enjoy the studio life, but if Judas Priest ever called up and needed a touring drummer to travel, I mean, is that something that you would ever consider? I'm just using Judas Priest as kind of, but is that something in the back of your mind that you'd want to tour, or are you just kind of happy to be in the studio?
Yeah, I have done some touring in the past, I don't think it's possible at the moment to travel many places due to the current situation, right?
Now the tours are I went to the living room and the kitchen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, but the apartment tour. Yeah,
exactly.
No, but touring. Touring is definitely on the agenda, and it's something that I'd really like to do more of. So who knows what the future holds? But with the current crisis, I think it's. I read something in the press that along the lines something like they said now worldwide there's been about 300,000 deaths. From this disease. Yeah,
pretty much. I'm already seeing events in the fall canceled. I don't think we're going to see any kind of gathering of any size really until next year sometime.
Yeah. I actually, I put something out actually on social network and just asked people. I said, when will live music start up again. And, it's interesting, some of the replies you get, or the comments you get from people, because everyone's, nobody actually knows. So everyone's kind of saying something different,
Right.
But, no, but I mean, for a lot of, for all musicians throughout the whole world, I think it's a very difficult time. Because nobody, all the touring bands and all the artists and, even the local bands, nobody really knows when everything's going to start up again.
Right.
And I mentioned this the other day. I would have thought that, if a lot of the, these like venues and certainly the bars, the bars over here where a lot of the bands play, if they eventually open, I would have thought the first thing on their agenda would be to start getting their clientele coming again,
right.
to get their clients coming again and create some business. And I would have thought the last thing on their list would be, let's hire a band, you know what I mean? Because that's going to cost money,
Yeah,
So,
and it's what I don't know how it is over there, but around here, it's definitely going to boil down to what they're allowed to do. In Massachusetts here, they're talking about letting restaurants open. The best case scenario I heard is at 50% capacity. I've heard at 25% capacity, with no bar stools, so there's no sitting at the bar, and they're just flat out not allowed entertainment. You can't have a band, so it's not even an option. Like you're allowed to sit and eat, and that's it.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I mean, I can believe that, and it's scary because it's scary because people just don't know. They just don't know what's going to happen. And that's the thing is, you're obviously finding out through the media and the government and, decisions that are being made, on a daily and weekly basis, and, the changes that are going along, but it's certainly not, it's not a quick process at all, is it?
No. And I mean, our state is supposed to open up like next Monday, like open up,
right?
Or start to relax the restrictions, or whatever. And I mean, even the restaurants downtown, they're like, we don't know what we're supposed to be doing. Am I supposed to be going out and getting masks for my staff? Like, it's been very confusing, and I mean, to no one's fault. I mean, no one's been through this, so who knows how it's supposed to work?
Yeah, well, they were talking over here about the property agents, opening again. They call them the estate agents, let houses and apartments.
Okay.
And sell them,
Yeah.
But of course, the problem with with that obviously is that say if you're selling your house at the moment, the last thing you want to do is let strangers off the street come into your house who could be infected,
right?
And walk around your house, to view your house or apartment to see whether they're interested in buying it or not.
Right.
So that's going to be interesting to see how the agents, deal with that, because it's
Yeah, that's one I haven't heard about. Around, maybe Americans are more vain. The thing that everyone's going on about here is, barbershops and hair salons, and people are breaking quarantine rules to go get their nails done. It's ridiculous.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, coming back to what you were saying, it's going to be interesting because, like you said, even if they allow restaurants to open, like, how is that going to work? How are people going to socially distance? If you go to a restaurant, how are you going to socially distance in a restaurant? I can't, you know what I mean? I can't imagine how that would work.
Right.
And certainly in a bar, it's like if you go, if you're going to go to a bar,
you go to a pub to have a beer and just be like,
Yeah, it's like, okay, I'm going to sit over there. You're going to sit there, and then the third guy can go and sit the other end of the room. We'll wave at each other.
I was talking with a friend of mine. I'm like, there's going to be no more private conversations because you're going to have to yell to everybody.
Yeah. No, exactly.
Ollie, I want to say thank you for taking the time to talk to us. You sent me over a file off of the Charlemagne album, correct? Let me see. We're going to tack it
Yeah, that's right. The track's called the track's called Let Legend Mark Me as the King, and it's one of the tracks off the Omens of Death album. It's actually the 6th track on the heavy metal Christopher Lee album.
Nice. So we'll tack that on to the end of the episode so our listeners can have a listen to, no offense, Christopher Lee and you. He's always going to get top billing, man. I don't know. But no, I want to say thank you for taking the time to reach out and chat with us. And
no, hey, thank you, Andy. Thanks for having me.
So it's been
fun. Great to meet you. And yeah.
And so our listeners can check that out and check out all the. I mean, you mentioned a ton of bands, so I'm gonna have some homework to do. And so thanks again, and thanks to our listeners.
Yeah, no, I mean, thanks. Thanks a lot for talking to me, and like I said, a lot of the recordings that I've mentioned are available, online. So you've got the 2 Christopher Lee albums, Charlemagne, the Sword and Charlemagne by the Sword and the Cross, and then Charlemagne, the heavy metal album, The Omens of Death. There's the video that I mentioned. I was in, The Bloody Verdict of Verdun. That's just you can look that up on YouTube. And then also there's the Christmas tracks as well, that you can find on YouTube, and they're on iTunes as well, I think. So yeah, quite a bit of stuff out there. Yeah.
Outstanding. Well, maybe we can hold off on those Christmas tracks till December.
yeah, exactly.
All right, thanks, man.
When I pass from this world to the next, when I am laid and my soul is put to rest, my legacy will be there for all to see. For how long after I am gone will my deeds outlive me?
The apostle says we must all appear before our Christ, to judge my place in the world, the way I framed my life. 'Tis a fearful thing to fall into God's hands. Only he who repents shall pass into the heavenly lands.
When all the deeds of my life are played before my eyes, will what I see come as a great surprise? Life is short, the hour of death uncertain. I must confess my sins before they draw the final curtain. Will I be remembered for my victories, small and great? The glory of the Christian name I sought to disseminate. Let legend mark me as the king, of whom future generations will sing. Trust me not in my old age, when my will and strength doth fail. Forsake me not till I show forth thy arm to all the ages that are yet to come. Holy times shall be revealed, but all is on my face is in arms to what's for the air. Will the golden age of Charlemagne glow more brightly long after my reign, when all the battles have been lost and won? Will this warrior king in memory still live on, live on, live on, live on? to spread the true religion.
Was the terror of extreme punishment as a means to enforce observance of the doctrines of peace? There were, of course, moments I desired to surrender.
My crown, a robe's royal hoard, and my holy scepter. Sometimes I wondered why I could not retire from this world to the peace of a monastic cell or a pilgrim to the Lord. Let legend mark me as the king of whom future generations will sing. Lost me not in my old age, when my will and strength doth fail. Forsake me not till I show forth my arm to all the ages that are yet to come. For in time shall be revealed what was on my face in because there was no day. And will the golden age of Salome glow more brightly long after my reign, when all the battles have been lost and won? Will this warrior king in memory still live on, live on, live on, live
Thanks for listening to the podcast. You can find us on all social medias at Inebri-art, except for Instagram, we're at Inebri-art6. You can email us with your questions, complaints, and whatnot at Inebri-art@yahoo.com. And if you're looking for more podcasts, you can check out the other podcasts on our network, Retro Redoctopus, America's Hometown Horror, and, of course, Bar Talk, Old Colony, and Inebri-art Podcast, the original. So check those out and subscribe and comment so we can reach more people, and thanks for listening.